Since 1993, the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation has been dedicated to preventing Alzheimer's disease by funding research studies and educational programs on a brain-healthy lifestyle. As a nonprofit organization, our research and educational outreach activities are made possible by the generosity of private donors. It is our vision that the 4 Pillars of Prevention program can reduce the risk of developing Alzheimer's disease, and everyone can enjoy a lifetime of peak mental performance. To learn more, please visit our website at www.alzheimersprevention.org. For ongoing updates, you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Lori, and everyone joining me. I'm beyond delighted to welcome Lori LaBey here with us tonight. The title of this program, or this conversation, is The Caregiver's Journey, New Ways to Find Meaning. And I've known Lori personally for a couple of years. And of course professionally for longer. And I know that she has had an incredible experience in caregiving that has really transformed her life. And so she's an activist, she's an ambassador, she's a influencer. She's a creative force behind a number of social initiatives in the field of caregiving for people with dementia and memory loss and Alzheimer's. And so I guess without further ado, Lori, welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here tonight, so this should be fun.
Yeah. So would you like to share with our audience what brought you to this field, now that I've mentioned it?
Well, like most, caregiving isn't something that you typically sign up for and say, "Hey, put me on the list." It's something that just happened to our family. And my mom was diagnosed. I shouldn't say was diagnosed. She had symptoms of dementia starting in her mid-50s. It took them 10 years to actually formally diagnose her. For 10 years, they poo-pooed it to hormones. And but she knew all along. She was very adamant that she had Alzheimer's disease, and for whatever reason, we don't know why, because back then no one really even talked about it. And then my dad also ended up with brain cancer. And so being the only girl with an older brother and a younger brother, it was kind of like tag, I'm it. And that was always my role growing up. I'm in my mid-50s, and, I was raised to take care of people. That's just, what my mom did. That's what she role modeled for me, and so that was a real natural thing for me to do. I didn't understand, that there was even such a role. I just thought it was, part of what a little girl did. All of her life was to take care of the family, and the guys kind of did the outside stuff and the macho stuff, and the women kind of took care of the house. And so, for many years, like a lot of people, I didn't call myself a caregiver. I called myself a daughter. I called myself a friend. And I think that that's one of the struggles that so many people still have these days, even though we're using that word caregiver more. It's a word that I would really like to see us get rid of. I really think it connotates and sets us up for a sense of drainage and a sense of failure, and a sense of loss of oneself. When you just look at the words care and giving, you're giving it away instead of it takes us away from our relationship-based, friends and family. And, even though I use that word a lot when I go out and I speak and I talk, One of the things that I say is one of the simplest things that we can change as individuals, it takes no time and no money, is just to change that phrase. Stop referring to yourself or others as a caregiver and start referring to them as a care companion or a care partner, because both of those, when you say those words, I think are much more empowering, and it says, hey, I'm not the only guy in this game, that when I give, I receive, and we talk about that all the time, the importance of giving, and when you do, you get filled back up, tenfold. But when you say the word caregiver, we're not reminded of that. And I think, when we care for somebody, it can become very stressful and it can become very isolating. And it's a simple thing to forget, but it's a powerful thing to remember because it can help ground us, rebalance us, refocus us on what our true jobs are at hand. And so for me, I was brought into this field basically, you could say by accident, or you could say that it was, just a God thing. And for me, I feel like I've landed in the space that I have been attuned to all of my life. But I now have more power and ability to be more creative, look at things differently, and have a bigger impact. And so I really feel like this is what I was born to do. So it's pretty fascinating and fulfilling place to be in life when you really love your job and it doesn't feel like work.
Of course. Well, that's wonderful. Everybody see why we love Lori. She's just a couple minutes and she's already transformed us. So, yeah. So I was thinking, can you give us some examples of like your real care sharing, care companion experiences? How did these experiences change your life?
Well, I'll give you a little one. I remember, and this was with my dad with brain cancer. My mom and dad were going to travel, and it was a really small thing, but it had a really large impact on me. And so I was bringing them to, I don't know if it was the airport or whatever, and my dad really wanted to carry his suitcase, but it was way too heavy for him. And so I said, no, I'll do it, not a problem, Dad. And I didn't realize how much I took away from him by carrying that suitcase. Mm. But I could actually feel his loss when we were driving in the car of, that he wasn't the man that he used to be and how he grieved for that. And a simple thing that I could have done was to pack 2 suitcases, one for each of us to carry, and still empower him. And so it's the little things that make a huge difference in terms of being able to continue to allow people to feel purposeful and connected, and that they, that we're enabling them instead of, I was one of those people, and, I joke about it now with my brothers. I thought I was really, really organized. That's who I've always been all my life, on top of things. If somebody has a problem, they come to me, and I was kind of the fix-it lady. Now, my brothers, on the other hand, say, no, you're kind of a control freak. and for me, that was like kind of a slap in the face. Well, what do you mean? And they said, well, when it came to caring for Mom and Dad, we never felt we could live up to your standards. And, and so I had to step back and really look deeply at that, because when my dad had passed and my mom was still with us, we were sharing stories. And basically it was me sharing all these wonderful moments I had with my folks. And I remember my young brother looking at me one time, and I'm going to cry saying this, with tears in his eyes, and he said, why don't I have those stories? Wow. And I just thought, I remember looking at him, and out of my lips said, because you weren't there. And that's how we got into this discussion of roles. And I said, I asked you to be there. I asked for help because a lot of, care partners do ask, especially their siblings. We're always trying to fix our siblings and get them to see things in our light. And what both my brothers said is like, you asked us to come and, have supper with them and deal with that. But Lori, your idea of supper and our idea of supper are two different things. And we knew it wasn't acceptable to you if we picked up a pizza or if we ran through McDonald's. Because you wanted us to cook a meal with Mom and Dad. But that's just not our skill set, and we didn't have time for that. And it really made me go, wow, I have to take some responsibility for not realizing the impact that I had. I cared for my parents. I call myself an advocate on steroids, for the disease and for caregiving. And, I really was. I was just kind of over the edge. I was always trying to do the very, very best at every moment, and I really put all my energy into that, even though I was married and had a child and worked full time and continued to volunteer. I didn't give anything up. I just kept balancing everything. And so, when you take that much on, you're not able to see the big picture. You're not able to go up, several hundred feet and look down and really see what's going on and how everybody is impacting one another, because you're so busy just kind of protecting your own checklist of things to do. And so it was a real eye opener. It was a great, honest discussion that we had. And, it made me realize that no matter how great I think I am, nobody wants to spend 24/7, tethered to my side. That diversity is the spark of life, and that as care partners, we have to be really careful that we're not too overprotective, that we end up putting up those walls that we don't even know we're doing. And we have to let go, and we have to let others be who they are with our loved one, or, if we're a professional caring for someone, we have to allow those roles to happen. And they might not be acting the way we want them to or we think they should, but they're acting in a way that is authentic to themselves. And that bears a real importance in any relationship, as long as it's not doing harm to somebody else. And so it's one of those things that, again, I didn't see it until it kind of slapped me in the face. And then I had a choice. I could deny it and say my brothers are crazy, and, that they were just using me as to strengthen their whole denial in terms of dealing with the issue, which was part of it. It definitely was part of it. They didn't want to see and feel what was going on, so it was easier to use their sister as an excuse for part of it. And, and so I called them on that, too. I said, I'll take some responsibility, but I am not taking it all. You guys could have mentioned that to me, years ago, and you chose not to. You chose to stay away. And so, it was just a healthy conversation, and it wasn't, none of us were blaming the others. It was just a really authentic place to go, and I know that can be difficult for families and friends both to go to. But when we stop trying to fix the other guy, and when we just really want to focus on what's best for who we're caring for, it makes it so much easier. But there were many years that, because, I'm now a professional in the industry, and you kind of go, okay, people all around the world listen to my voice, but I cannot fix my own family. You just kind of go crazy with that. And the moment I let that go, I realized how much freedom I had. I realized how much of my energy was going towards something I couldn't control and I couldn't fix. And it was kind of like looking at yourself as being a piece of Swiss cheese. and you're seeing that energy just flow out of your body when you're trying to fix something you can't control. And so when I was able to plug those holes up and say, you know what, I don't need to go there anymore. They are who they are. I am who I am. And we all have choices. And we're all here to learn different lessons in life at different times. Then I realized I had a lot more energy to be able to focus on my parents. And it gave me a sense of calmness. It gave me a sense of peace. And it allowed me to seek out and create a lot more joy because I personally was more filled. I wasn't allowing that energy to drain out anymore. So those are a couple of examples.
Sure.
I could go on because there were so many life lessons, with this disease that are so beautiful. One of the things that I tell Curdy all the time is, my mom's disease, her dementia for 30 years was and probably will be the biggest gift I'll ever receive in my whole entire life, because the life lessons she taught me through this process apply to all of my life, and now I'm able to share them with others. And so it's pretty cool.
Very cool. It takes, I think it takes at least a double take, I think, to understand what you mean, or even relate, or even try to get into that frame of mind. Because, let's face it, it's a hard situation to be in. Like you said, a lot of people, if they're family members, they don't get paid. Sometimes people lose their jobs because they have so much to do to care for their loved ones. And they end up, really giving up everything to take care of their loved one or their loved ones. And so just, I guess, just to hear what you're saying, that it's the biggest life lesson and gift is quite almost, I would dare to say it's almost the opposite of what many people feel.
That's true, and that's kind of, I was in healthcare for 10 years, working with the developmentally disabled in group homes, got burnt out in that, went into residential real estate, and then was really called through my connections there, because I work so much with the senior market, to really have my voice be heard. And I didn't really know if my friends and colleagues were just feeling sorry for me or if they really thought my voice needed to be heard. So I started kind of sharing my positive story and my positive view of caring with people on the blog, and was kind of shocked that people all over the world connected with it. And it just kind of grew from there. But one of the really important things that I learned fairly early on was I kind of flipped a switch in my mind whenever my mom or my dad would do something that just didn't seem right. It was just out of whack. And I instead of getting mad and trying to correct it, which a lot of times is what we do, no, it's not that time, it's not that date, no, the story didn't go like that. We're in that fix-it mode. They have to have it correct. Instead, I started asking myself, what do I need to learn from this experience? What is there for me to learn? And so every time I would get frustrated, I would really just pray on that, and ask for guidance. What is my lesson? And what I found was that, with dementia, specifically, but I think it applies to everyone, I found that we all use the same equation for our reactions, and that is, our current attitude plus our past experiences equal our perceptions, and our perceptions trigger our reactions. And the rest of us will call a reaction a behavior when it doesn't fit our mode or our model. And what I would do is step back and say, you know what? They are still following a logical recall or process in their mind. It might not make sense to us, but what is that process? What triggered that? So there's one story that I talk about, and I won't read the story, but it's called The Sand Trap. And when my mom was early in the disease, they had just retired up at the lake, and my dad decided to take up golfing. And he would go once a week, and he would get up at 5 in the morning, and he'd be home no later than 11 in the morning. And my mom would sleep in until 10. And he would have the coffee pot set to start brewing for her. He'd have her donut and her newspaper set by her chair. Everything was ready for her. But in my mom's mind, she was a golf widow, and that's all she would talk about. You would think my dad golfed, 2 rounds every day, and that she was home alone, and yet she was maybe awake for an hour once a week alone. And so as a family, we got really tired of hearing that, and we felt really bad for my dad because that was kind of his one escape, to get rejuvenated with his buddies. And so we decided, Mom was physically able, so let's go golfing. So we bought her a red bag because that was her favorite color, and my husband and I and my mom and dad went golfing. Well, of course, the guys were in front of us, and Mom and I were behind. And all of a sudden, Mom is swinging her club, and she is at the top of a sand trap. And as she swings her club, she loses her balance, and she rolls into the sand trap. I run up the hill, and here's my mom literally doing the breaststroke in the sand trap.
Oh, my God.
And I remember looking at her in amazement because she was so calm and so peaceful, and she had just this brilliant light of kind of pride. She was just really proud of herself swimming in the sand. And what triggered for me in that instant was that my mom's childlike state of mind was saving her and putting her in a safe place. She was a lifeguard. She loved to swim, and so it wasn't scary to her. And so when I went up and asked my mom, can I help you up, I remember looking at her, just her eyes in my meeting, and she looked and she connected. She came out of that peaceful, content little place where she was swimming, and, she said, sure, Lori, I could help her up. And there was just this glint in her eye and yet a sadness that she realized she was swimming in a sand trap. And she wasn't in Lake Phalen, where she grew up. And then she just burst out in this laugh. And she, we both just kind of roared and chuckled as we got her out of the sand. But it was a brilliant moment between the two of us, and a lesson I'll never forget, that we always have to put on our investigative hat and ask, why are they reacting the way they are? The other thing we have to always remember, like my dad in the suitcase situation, is how would we react if someone was caring for us? Most of us don't like to be cared for. So how much care is healthy? How much do we do for somebody before we start undoing them as a whole person? And those are questions we don't ask ourselves because we're usually too busy doing our checklist and taking control of everything because that's what we think we're supposed to do. If we're a professional or family member, who I've interviewed, thousands of people around the world, and I'll say, what do you need to focus on? And they all give me basically the same thing. They rattle off of a list of tasks, of things to do. I have to, do the laundry. I have to do the finances. I have to do the medical appointments. I have to cook. I have to drive. And it's all these I have tos. And, when you look at that list, you would think that it's all person-centered because they're doing it for someone else, because someone else needs their assistance. And, it was probably a year or two after I started interviewing people and asking them about this question, I realized that, oh my gosh, I missed something else in everybody's answer. And what I missed was so subtle, and it's easy for all of us to miss in our day-to-day lives, but there was a twang in everyone's voice that said, basically, I don't want to be doing any of this. This is not the way I imagined my life. And that went for both family and friends and professionals. You know, there were certain tasks that they just didn't want to do. And what I realized in that moment was that our emotions trump our ability to be person-centered, because our emotions are too busy focusing on us. Even though it's subconscious and it's something that most of us don't even talk about, it's in control. And so from that moment forward, I created a tool called Your Memory Chip, which I think saved me and my relationship with my mom, which had always been good. But I was really at, the breaking point many times, as most caregivers are, if they're willing to admit it or not. And I on this card, I would read it every time I would go see her or talk to her on the phone, or nowadays you could do it by video. And it just had 3 really simple questions on it. And the first one was, what do I always want her to remember? And for me as a daughter, I wanted her to know that I loved her. As a professional, for most it's going to be, hey, we're here to support you. But we have to go much deeper than just our words. We have to start modeling it in all of our senses. So we have to be aware of even what kind of, perfume or cologne are we wearing. We have to look at our voice inflection and tone. We have to look at the phrases we use and develop patterns. How are we approaching? Are we touching? What angle are we coming in? All of those things are embedding routines, and they're tapping into different senses. And the more of them we can use, the easier it's going to be for them to retain who we are longer. So that's the first one. The second one was, what do I need to focus on? And again, everyone, including myself, would have a to-do list. I ran around with a checklist, and I felt really empowered every time I could cross something off that list, because I felt I was doing something. And when someone is ill, especially with a chronic illness, most of us don't feel like that's even enough, but it's the best we can do. And so I stopped focusing on my checklist, though I still carried it with me, because those things still have to get done. Someone has to make the meals and do the medications and all of those things. But instead of focusing first on those tasks, I focused on, was my mom safe? Was she happy? And was she pain-free? And when I focused on those 3 things, I changed how I delivered my services, how I got those tasks done. And I also found that, everything I had on my list didn't necessarily need to get done in the order I thought, or to the extent that I thought. And I was able to maybe not clean as often. I was able to just kind of let stuff go. I was able to let my brothers come in with a pizza or McDonald's and not clean up the way I would have, but to allow them to have their conversation and watch a game and be who they are. And there's a lot of freedom in that, when we can get to that point. There's a lot of grace that comes with that. And there's a lot more joy that can be had. And then the third question on that is, what do I always want to remember? Because that is something that I find that, caregivers or care partners worry about, don't always talk about, but they're always worried. Am I going to remember who they once were? And so instead of worrying about that, let's start documenting it. Let's start going through those boxes of pictures. Let's start taking more photos, more video, more audio. Let's start creating more joy. Because another lesson that I learned in this process was, and it made me look at it really hard and fast, was I've come to the conclusion that there's only three things that we remember in life: that saddens us, that creates fear, and that causes joy. And
what was the first one?
The first one is sadness.
Oh, I see.
And the sadness typically goes with the loss. And it's looking at the past of all the things that we've lost that we once had or that we once dreamed we would have. And instead of looking at being grateful for what we had, because so many people never had that to begin with, so kind of switching to an air of gratitude. The fear is we can get all wrapped up with what's coming down the road, and if most of us are willing to be honest, probably 95%, even probably higher, of what we worry about never happens because we worry really good, and so we figure out every potential bad option that's out there. And so when we are living in the future, projecting and kind of living on that level of fear, or when we're living in that realm of the past, we miss the moment before us. And the moment before us is the only moment where joy can be had. It's the only place it can be found. It's the only place it can be created. And so, I would say to everyone on the call today, what do you want in your life? Do you want sadness, fear, or joy? Because you will only find for what you're looking for. And most people, when I ask an audience, say they want joy, well, then we have to switch where our mind goes. And we have to really learn to be grateful for what we've had. And we have to, we really have to start looking for joy. And joy will look very different from what it used to look like, especially with dementia as the disease progresses. But it is still there in huge amounts. And it might be a twinkle in the eye. It might be a soft giggle. It might be a smile or seeing someone's dimple. It might be a hug. But you will find that those joys are much deeper and richer than big parties or gifts. They're just so much more precious. I mean, you can't put a price tag on them. And you will find also, as the disease progresses, new levels of unconditional love. I can't even count. I did an article once on unconditional love, and I should pull it out again because I was shocked at the levels of love that I didn't even know existed. Yeah. Because things changed.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. It's like with little kids, right? Because they don't filter. And as adults, we get so good at filtering and hiding and not showing our emotions, not allowing ourselves to even feel sometimes. And so when, I think in general, I mean, for sure, when people, have cognitive difficulty, dementia or memory loss, definitely, you don't filter. You're just who you are, in the good and in the not so good. But I think in many illnesses also it happens. You just have to let go of all your other stressors and your other fears of being yourself. So I'm not surprised to hear that, but it's a beautiful, beautiful way to put it. I really enjoy it.
When you talked about the kids, one of the examples that I give, because I really think it's important for all of us to understand our nonverbals much more, because a lot of times we can get upset with someone we're caring for because they're agitated or they're angry, and a lot of times they're mirroring what we're feeling and we think we're hiding. But they can still pick up on all of those things. So, I talk about, have you ever been in a room with a child, maybe a grandchild, and you're in there painting or coloring or doing something, and it's just the two of you, and you're just in that zone. It's playful, it's fun, there's nobody around, and there's just a sense of joy and peace and connectiveness that you can almost not even explain. and then let's say their parent walks just into the door frame. They don't even enter the room. And you don't even have to look up, but you can feel their presence. And you know you're in trouble because you probably were doing something that you weren't supposed to with the kid. I told you not to, let them paint in that outfit or whatever it is. But it instantly changes without a word being said. And both you and the child can feel it. And the person in the doorway has no idea that their presence has totally changed their environment. Because it's just something we're not conscious of, And even if we are, a lot of times we don't care. It's like, come on, we got to get going, one of those things. And instead of letting a moment, kind of simmer and then end, we're real abrupt, in terms of our time frames and when things need to get done. So just being aware of the nonverbals, I think, is very, very important. Richard Taylor, who was a huge advocate living with the disease, I heard him speak once, and I'll never forget him talking about he could tell if he was ever going to see somebody again by the way they hugged him. Once he disclosed to them that he had dementia, he said he could tell by the hug if he was ever going to see that person or not. Wow. And it was just so powerful. And I've actually developed an exercise that I do with my groups with that, and it's amazing. And people see the difference instantly by the different hugs that they do, and how important that is, because we can't hide that stuff. We think we can, but there's so many other ways. We might not cry or we might not yell or scream, but people can still read that fake smile or the stiffness in your body or the crossed arms. They're picking up on all of that stuff. And a person with dementia, even though they might not be able to speak and elaborate, I relate it to a person in a coma. We all know that a person in a coma can take everything in. They just can't spit it all out.
Right. Absolutely correct.
And dementia, staff and family say very inappropriate things in front of them many times. And then we wonder why they're upset. Well, look what you just said, or you're talking around them, and they want to be included, even if it's just eye contact, to know as one being to another that there's a respect there and that there's still a connection. And so we just all need to be more conscious in how we care and kind of pull away from that checklist a little bit. And I know everyone's kind of sick of, Oprah and everybody talking about being in the moment, but there's a lot to be said for being present. And once you take the time to try it, you'll realize how disconnected you've actually gotten. Because you'll feel these little moments of joy that actually you've been missing. They've been there the whole time, but you haven't slowed down enough to catch them. You haven't looked for them.
Yeah, that's really true. Wow, what a lesson that you're sharing with us. It's now just past the 40 minutes after the hour, so we have a little, about, give or take 15 minutes. I was wondering if if this would be a good time for you, Lori, if we opened it up to questions.
Sure.
From our. So if anyone would like to ask a question to Lori, please press *7. You will unmute yourself, and then you can ask your question. And if not, I have some more questions too.
Okay.
So feel free, anyone.
While we wait.
While we wait. Go ahead. Did you want to?
I was just going to put one thing in there that You know, a lot of times what I hear, you know, when I speak around the country all the time, staff and family really struggle when someone is placed. And there's a lot of distrust many times. And so one of the things that I think that we have to really focus on is understanding that, and I try to explain this to staff, that, you know, families come in with a list of things that they want you to do, and they come in looking for problems because they have a limited time and they want what's best for their loved one. And so the only way that you can fix a problem is to find a problem. So the only way that you can improve life is, you know, in how we're brought up is to fix a problem. We really don't focus, and we're really not taught to create joy, and we're really not taught about connectiveness. And so we have to really build relationships with our families and help them trust us. Staff have to really share the person that they've gotten to know. You know, they need to send pictures and make calls and tell people, say, gosh, your mom had a great day today. Or I'm going to just shoot you a picture, a little video of how much fun we had today, because that makes a family relax and say they're being well cared for. They get my person. You know, so I don't have to come in on this mission looking to fix things, because now there's some trust. And, you know, that can ease so much pain and so much frustration on both sides if we just start sharing what's really important to us. And, you know, most communities, I mean, you get a call when, you know, someone screwed up a med, or someone's got a bruise, or they fell, or their sweater's missing, and it's all problem-oriented. So both sides are coming at it from a problem angle versus building a relationship and building trust and really doing the best for the person they're caring for. So if both sides can model that, that can make a huge impact and really shift comfort levels for everybody, especially the person we're caring for.
That's a great point. That's a very good point. Would you like to, is there anyone that has a question? I want to make sure we leave room for people. Hi.
This is Marilyn in Tucson.
Marilyn, hello.
Greetings.
Welcome.
Thank you. And I really appreciate, Lori, hearing you talk about things that we could do every day in our lives that better make our lives better, but came to you via caregiving. And one of the things that I had learned working in a building where people had to be cared for because they couldn't be cared for at home anymore was the idea of redirection. You touched on it earlier. You don't want to have to just say no, no, no to the person, or don't. And just take no out of the vocabulary.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. You know, and don't argue with people. You're not going to change their mind. The logic piece is gone. And so we spend a lot of time arguing and trying to prove our point, and we make it a win-lose instead of a win-win. And when we start focusing on the win-win, we become much more inclusive versus exclusive. And that makes a huge shift, you know, because when we're exclusive, that makes separation, that creates anxiety, that can cause feuds, you know. And when we're inclusive, that develops friendships and bonds and a connectiveness. And so it really is in our approach, you know, on how are we gonna solve this, and how would we like to be treated? None of us want to hear the word no, you know. Starting at 2, we don't want to hear the word no, and you know, probably earlier than that. And so that's something that doesn't change. So it really is about empowering people, you know, to help out. Maybe they can't make a meal, maybe they can't do their shower on their own, but there's certain pieces of that where they can still be included. And maybe that's singing a song, you know, while you're giving them their bath, or there's so many different techniques. And I think one of the biggest mistakes I see too out there when we're caring for people is we have this attitude of, we're so afraid of failure, and there is no magic bullet. There is no one criteria in terms of best practices. You'll hear a ton about best practices, and there's lots of them. And some will work sometimes for a person and some won't. And so to me, it's really about developing a toolkit and knowing that those resources are there. And you just, if that one doesn't work, you try another one, but don't give up. Just try something else, because every time you try something, you're going to learn something else. And then once you've used a tool, share it. Share your story with somebody else, because it will help them learn how to engage better. Even your failures, that's how all great products are made. Is they just don't pop up. There's a lot of failure. So if we get the attitude of trial and error, and it's better to try than to never try, there's a lot of power in that as well. And you'll find a lot of peace in that, knowing that, personally you did all you could. And some days, you just might not have it in you to keep going. And, the other thing is to not have that inner critic beat you up too much. They're going to come out, and you're going to hear those voices in your head saying you should have done it better, you should have done it different. And, just tell that person, that little voice, to skedaddle. Okay, I've heard you. Now get out of here, because I'm waiting for my next moment, and I'll try to do better then, and move forward.
I love that you used Care Partner, because although I'd heard that used with another group of helpers, it made an impact of understanding where they come from in using the term. And I also found sometimes we just have to be willing to join their reality, because they're not capable of being in how we see the world.
Well, exactly. And their reality, it can be so gorgeous and so much fun, because they don't have all these rules. They don't have all these timelines. And so, for me, my own personal journey, my mom taught me how to play again. She taught me not to take things so seriously. And, you can talk to anybody who's sick. I mean, I don't care if it's just the flu or if it's chronic illness. People still enjoy laughter and love. I mean, that is, that's kind of the glue that holds us all together. And when we take illness so seriously and we lose our sense of humor, or we lose our ability to even see it or acknowledge it, that's a massive loss. That's a massive loss, because the body actually, the chemistry of the body actually changes when we laugh. They have laughter yoga, and there's a lot of science that's coming out behind that. And you don't want to be laughing at somebody. You want to be laughing with somebody. And that might be just something silly that happened that doesn't make any sense. But, if your best friend did it, you'd be roaring at them when they did something silly. So don't take that away from your relationships. Because that can be a huge turning point for both of you.
Well, I want someone else to have a chance to share, but I also found it's helpful to say, would you like to wear the black pants today or the red ones? And put those choices in as much as possible, and then it brings that partnership. So thank you for those terms.
Well, and that's great, and you limited it just to 2, and that's one of the things nowadays. Everybody wants so many options, but options aren't good with dementia. And so giving them 1 or 2 choices, or putting selections in front of them versus them having to figure out, what is it you're asking me, makes a huge difference too. So good thoughts. Thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. So I wanted to take a few minutes here, Lori, to ask you to tell us what is going on in your advocacy work, because it's very important, because also, for us, it's the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation, and Marilyn knows. By the way, I'll formally introduce Marilyn, is the AARPF's customer service person.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so she is the one that answers the phone and answers emails when people write or call, and sometimes people don't know where to start. So tell us what's going on, the progress that you and a few people like you have been able to make for our communities.
Well, I think, for me, I kind of went in at it at a level of I'm just going to break all the rules because I don't think they're working. so, and so I want to try new things. I want to have different discussions. I want to have different focal points, and I want to have fun. And so everything that I do, I try to do with what I call emotional-based training. I want people to feel the need to change. I don't want to just throw out statistics and scare them with numbers. I want them to really understand what it's like. And so, we do the radio show, which we do every Tuesday. We've been doing that for, 4 years now. So we've got tons of archives. We interview people all over the world. We interview people diagnosed with dementia. We interview family and friends that are care partners. Harvard Research has been on. You guys have been on. We have all different types of businesses. We've had movie directors and singers and songwriters and authors. My philosophy with Alzheimer's Speaks is that until we listen to all voices, we won't be able to make effective change. We're not going to make sustainable change unless we understand where everybody is coming from. We have to understand what their needs are and how they perceive current services to really develop new ones. And, another one of our platforms is the Dementia Chats, which is a webinar which we typically do the second and fourth Tuesday of each month. But in November, I'm just not able to do it. I've got jury duty coming up next week. And so, but those are free webinars. Anybody can attend. And what's different with those is our experts have dementia. And so what I found was that there's a lot of times family can't ask their loved one a certain question, but they want some insight. Or a staff can't ask a client, but they could ask somebody else and get some great insight. And so that's been really fun. There's the Purple Angel Project, which is the new global symbol for dementia, which was started by a man, Norms McNamara, over in the UK. It's free. You just have to read a small little poster. And it's not about having all the answers. It's about utilizing this symbol in your marketing, on your Facebook, your Twitter account, whatever it might be. You can do it on your letterhead, in your email signature, and you just want to get people to ask, what is it? And that opens the door to an Oz conversation where you can say, hey, that's the new global symbol for dementia. I'm also working on the new film, which is a Hollywood film called His Neighbor Phil, and I'm one of the platinum sponsors, so I get to go around the country and do screenings of that, and it's just a marvelous film because it's the first film that really shows what it's like to be a family care partner and how the dynamics of the family change. And so the show is like 90 minutes, and it's got Hollywood actors and local actors in it, and then we do a little talk back. And typically it's so powerful that for the first 5 to 10 minutes I have to kind of fill the air because people can't even talk because it's there's just so many touch points in it. So, I just try to do things that are a little bit different, and I just am very adamant about raising everyone's voice. None of us have all the answers. None of us should ever think we have all the answers because that's when we get stagnant and that's when we get behind the ball. And we need to get ahead of this curve. I'm big time into a lot of grassroots efforts because I believe it's the passion that pushes the change, not necessarily the and I hope no one takes offense to this, but the medical or academic or government models that are out there are a lot of times driven by political influence in terms of we need this position, we need that connection.
Exactly.
And not all those people want to be there. And when they don't want to be there, they disrupt the movement of progress. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I love the grassroots efforts, because, I just go in and help them focus on, what are your goals? What are your skill sets? What kind of time frame do you have? What do you have to work with? And, it doesn't have to be big and brash. Let's start out with simple changes, like let's start saying care partner instead of caregiver.
Great.
Let's start giving people, eye contact and a smile. That doesn't cost anything. But if you can feel the impact in terms of what you're doing, how that helps the person that you're smiling at and giving eye contact to, if you can just slow down for a moment in your thought and realize the impact you have, and then how that makes you feel that you've had that impact on one, and then start thinking about what would that look like if I could get 10 other people to do that. That's how we change culture. That's how we really shift our dynamics, and that's how we really serve people. It's
that's
just
wonderful, yes.
Slowly.
Absolutely, and we're working finally. We are working on adopting the purple angel symbol, also. So
great.
Yes, I want to thank you very much, Lori. I want to thank also everyone that joined us today, and also I want to acknowledge Jennifer, who gave a nice donation for in support of our teleseminar today. I also want to announce that in 2 weeks, December 1st is Giving Tuesday. It's a special initiative that is about 4 years old. It's like after Black Friday. We want to have. We, of course, as the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation, are a beneficiary, but as a society, we want to try to change the rules and have a day when we all give back. And so our organization, nonprofit, is participating in Giving Tuesday. You can go to our website and donate on our website, or if you Google just Giving Tuesday, it will come up. And you can give a donation, and there's a movement to try to really help all the nonprofits out there. And so, if anyone is inclined, thank you for your support. And with this, we're right at I guess 1 minute past the hour. I won't hold anyone else up anymore. If you have any questions, you can email us at info@alzheimersprevention.org. And we will respond. Marilyn will respond, or any one of us will respond. Lori, thank you again very, very much for being on the program with us.
Sure. I was going to say, if anyone, has any questions that they want to, talk with me directly on, to feel free to, just shoot me an email or go to alzheimersspeaks.com. All my contact information is there. I'd be more than glad to help any way that I can.
Perfect. Yes, and if you go to alzheimersspeaks.com, you'll see what a wonderful website Lori has, really full of tools for people. So thank you again, everyone. Have a good evening. Happy Thanksgiving next week. Happy holidays. Stay in touch. Be safe. Be happy. And we send you our best regards.